Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's time that we dig back into the Farmall H project once again. So I'm looking at the manifold system now. I went with a new accurate reproduction manifold. It's got the Circle C logo in it with the casting number set up as the originals once were. I had been running a replacement aftermarket manifold and pipe on this tractor for the last since I rebuilt it, 15 years anyhow. And it always worked well, but it's kind of a one-size-fits-all. So the carburetor mounting flange was a bit oversized because it had to work with the newer Marvel Schiebblers as well as the original H carbs. And, well, I just decided to upgrade to something that was sized and designed appropriately to the engine. I've already painted some of it red. All right, we did the primer and the paint, same that I've been using for the rest of the tractor, and I'm going to do the same hybridized high temp silver on the exhaust with the gloss red on the intake that I did on the Farmall Super M. I was kind of on the fence as to how that would look on that tractor, and it turned out pretty well. So I'm going to do the same thing right here. This is the high temp silver that I used. It's a Eastwood product. This is leftover from the Super M. It's still good. High temp coating, matte silver, good up to 1400 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's held up very well on the Super M. So I think this is going to look, it's going to turn out well also. And the biggest thing about doing the red on it is to not have like silver down here and then all of a sudden a red carburetor. Plus most of this is hidden behind the hood panel anyway. So if we don't really like how it looks before the sheet metal's on, I think it'll look a lot better once it's in place. So let's get started. All right, so I think what I'm going to do, start on the backside first. We'll get all of this hard to reach area, and then tip it up. I'll do the tops of the flanges, and then we'll finally set it on the gasket surface and then cover the whole front edge. I just use these smaller hobby brushes for this because you don't need to cover a whole lot of surface area at a time. And you're also creeping up against red paint lines and stuff, so you want to have a bit more control than like a foam brush or a larger bristle brush. And when I did the Super M manifold, I found that two rather even coats did the job. The instructions on the can say to apply one kind of medium thickness coat and reassess, see if it needs another one, recoat within, I think they said within a day, otherwise the base layer sets up to the point that it might start to lift. But I found two coats on the Super M. The first one just kind of let it tack and then go over, hit it with a second one. The coverage was plenty adequate doing it like that. And we're just finishing up this edge down here. Wrap around just enough that we don't leave anything that's going to be difficult to reach after we reposition, and we are ready for a flip. And finally, we're coming down to the end of it. Get it pressed in very... Okay, people texting me ruining the shot. Get it pressed in very well all around the contours of the IH logo as well as the casting numbers. Spread it out. Not too thick, but not too thin. And this stuff leaves kind of a rough finish anyway. It doesn't lay perfectly flat, but I don't really think it was meant to. Clear those letters just a little bit. Numbers, sorry. Here we are. I think that turned out all right. I left the threads uncoated in there for the extension pipe, so we've got some of our flat washers prepped as well. That's going to need to set up for a few minutes before we can do anything else. So I guess all we have to do is look up. We'll find some more work. We have to be careful that we don't scratch any paint now. Headlights are looking good. Yeah, I think that'll work. So we need a few more minutes before we can do much with this. So I think I'm gonna throw the toolbox on. I've had that at the back of the bench for a while because I didn't want to put it in the way for fitting the fuel tank. Looking at that down there, I should have plenty of room to get that tank on and off with the toolbox in place. So we'll go ahead and do that real quick. But first, you can see this little square indentation, I hope, on camera. See if we can catch it in glare just right. Yeah, I think we can just barely see it right there. There was a decal that went there originally, and Steiner Tractor has reproductions of that International Harvester Toolbox decal for HM and MD model Farmall tractors. So first decal, we'll get that put on. Oh dang, it's upside down. No, just kidding. Just kidding. I put it on so that I can read it from the operator's seat. Pretty tough to mess this one up. They give you the recessed square to put it into. Yeah, that added a nice look to the tractor. Piece by piece, we're building it back to what it once was. It is time. And to finish up, we'll get some high temp smeared all over the studs and manifold nuts. Washers too. It doesn't pay to put this on before you put the wrench on it, because until this cures, and it's going to take engine heat for it to cure fully. And until it cures, it's pretty gummy, and a wrench will just peel most of it right back off. So I always put those on bare metal and then just coat them up really well after everything's torqued down. Yeah, when placed against the red backdrop of the rest of the engine, the two-tone paint scheme on the manifold I think looks pretty good. So we've got a little bit of time left here yet today before we've got to knock off. So I think it's time to finally really start concentrating on some sheet metal. I've got the grill cleaned down to bare metal enough that we can start with the straightening process. I wanted to show you all the screens on the inside. Of course, they crimp onto these metal strips, which should be spot welded to the inside of the grill. Both of them were broken loose. So we'll just take those right out of there with the mesh. We've got new screen mesh to go in, but it'll help us, some more debris, it'll help us to get through some of the straightening without those in place anyhow. Once we get the grill to where we are happy with it, then we can go ahead and spot those in. We've got another small crack starting up right here, which is pretty common for that area. We've had some of the spot welds pulling right here, and it's opened up that gap, so we're gonna have to close that back up, spot that back together. We've got a bunch of minor dents on the top we will have to address. They both dent in and dent out. We're pretty solid around the screw holes for the Farmall emblem, so we're pretty good right there. And then of course some of the slats have been tweaked a little bit. We've got a heck of a wrinkle that comes out right here. We've got a crack right there. It's gonna have to be welded, and some finishing to do on the bottom. So pretty standard as far as these Farmall grills go. I'll go as far as I can today with getting everything straightened out with my eye the way it is. They don't want me welding until they can get that fixed up. So we'll just see how much we can actually get done. Let's just pick an area and go. A lot of times on this slat work or metal work in general, I'll use feel over visual, because sometimes you can pick up, see we're dented in, okay, on this wider slat right through this area right here, and it looks all right from the outside, but I can feel just a high spot right there. And I love this big metal table. It's the perfect, most robust dolly you could ever have. Much better. A little bit of a dent in right there on that smaller slat, and a lot of times I just use round punches of varying diameters that fit inside of the slats themselves. I don't have any of the dollies, the special made dollies anyway, for straightening these Farmall screens. This slat right here needs to come up just a little bit. We get wide right there and skinny right there. This is just a piece of 3/8 flat bar. Fits in very nicely. Fortunately, these slats move rather easily. Now, if I had to go a long ways with that, I would take 2 pieces of flat bar to bind right here and right there, and then a third one in the middle, but this just has to move just a little bit. Better. I'm using this flanger now. It's a modified pair of vice grips to bring these 2 panels back together where they had pulled the spot welds. This will work a lot better once I can start gripping them and tacking them back in place again. But for now, we're just returning the 90-degree bends to one another, evening everything out, flattening again. Working on the top now, we have quite a few dents on this radius. I think you can catch it. There's a rather large one right there. It doesn't go very deep, but it's about that big around. We'll have to work that out from the inside. And something a lot of people don't realize when you're working dents, so something, punch that in from the outside. You don't just want to start on the high spot and start hammering that back flat, because think of it like a ripple. Okay, that high spot will start going down, but then it'll still be raised in a ring then around, so then you'd have to work all that out. What you want to do, if something creates a dent and pushes a high spot in, you want to take that back out in the reverse order in which it was created. So you don't start hammering in the middle, you start working it in from the edges, and you start flattening the edges first, and then work in further and further towards the center, and then finally try to lay the center flat. It's all about just visualizing how that was created. It started in the middle and then worked out. So you want to just do the opposite operation, start working it in from the outside until you finally get to the middle. That's going to give you the best results without having to use heat and other things. And a lot of times you do need to use heat because metal stretches anytime that it dents. So sometimes heat is just inevitable. But we'll do as much of this as we can today cold. Okay, it is a lot better than it was. I would say 80% of the way there. We haven't done any of the welding yet. That won't happen until after I get my eye work done, so we can fit it. Just see how everything is going to want to land. It's worth throwing the bolts in loosely just to make sure it is positioned correctly in relation to the radiator. Everything is very good up there. We've got this top pretty close to where it needs to be. We might need just a little bit of a skim of filler in a few spots to turn it into glass, but for the most part we're a lot better than what we were. We got that big wrinkle out of the side. Slats are all flattened out. We're looking good down around here. We've got the lower contour here all worked out. That insert will go in later. And edges look good here. And all the way up across the top as well. So that is all we can do to the grill until I can weld and close up some of these little cracks and breaks and things like that. So we're good with that. The next piece is going to be the fuel tank. You can see I've got most of the old paint off, actually just about all of it, and I found some unresolved rust issues on the top side beneath that old paint, so we will have to get that a little bit cleaner. But after we can get this squared away, it will go in place here, and then we can start looking at the hood and working that over, which will bridge the gap between the grill and the fuel tank. We can square away all of our pipes that will go up through, and things are progressing nicely. All right, we got to get around the clothesline here for the wrap up. So that's as far as I can go before I get my eye looked at. So as soon as I am able to be back in the shop, you all will be the first to know, however long that may take. I really want to start laying some paint down on some tin. We are getting so close, especially after the manifold and the toolbox and the lights. It's starting to take shape, so when I am back in fighting form, we'll get the feed rolling once again. Thank you as always, everyone, for your viewership. And when the time comes, I hope to see you back again.